Hey folks, Martin here from Mobility Direct. In this video I'm going to be talking about the differences between solid tyres and air, also known as pneumatic tyres, on a mobility scooter, along with the advantages and disadvantages of each type. So when buying a mobility scooter, you will sometimes have the choice between solid tyres and air, also known as pneumatic tyres. Now essentially the difference is that solid tyres are made of a synthetic rubber, whereas air tyres have a tube inside them similar to a bicycle. I'll point out at this stage that it's typically just the mid-size and large mobility scooters, or the category 3 scooters as they're called, that you will have the choice. Typically most of the small travel scooters will just be available in solid tyre form. Certainly most of the Pride range that we sell, really it's just the mid-size and large scooters that you'll have the choice between the two tyre options. So with the solid tyres, the main advantage is that they are puncture proof. That's really the main advantage, and it's a big advantage too. So the fact that you can't get a puncture with this type of tyre is a huge selling point for a lot of people, and it's the reason, or one of the main reasons, why they are so popular. Outside of the fact that you can't get a puncture with them, there's also less maintenance involved with them. So you don't have to check the tyre pressure or keep the tyres inflated like you do with air tyres. Outside of that, again, they're also made of a very hard wearing material, meaning that the tyre won't wear down easily. I've seen scooters here that are 10 years old with solid tyres and they're still in good working condition. Typically air tyres wouldn't last the same period of time without wearing down, at least to some degree. So when it comes to disadvantages of solid tyres, there aren't really that many to mention. Solid tyres are harder than air tyres, so when you're driving the scooter it's not going to be as comfortable, but for most people they're not going to notice too much of a difference. Outside of that, solid tyres don't grip to the ground as well as air tyres do, but unless you're going to be using the scooter on very rough ground, you're not going to notice much of a difference. If like most people you intend on using a scooter on footpaths and greenways, walkways, shopping centres, places like that, then solid tyres grip just fine on those types of terrain and you're not going to notice any difference between the two. So with the air tyres, as I mentioned, they are more comfortable than solid tyres when driving a scooter, but most people aren't going to notice too much of a difference. If you have a decent sized scooter with a well padded seat, good suspension, then for most people air tyres aren't going to make too much of a difference. But, and of course there's always a but, it's going to depend on the individual. So if, for example, you have a lot of back trouble or experience a lot of pain and you need the most comfortable solution possible when it comes to a mobility scooter, then the air tyres would have an advantage in that regard. Also, and I mentioned this as well, they do grip better. So if you're going to be using the scooter on where there's a lot of gravel or a lot of hilly surfaces or rough, uneven ground, then again, in situations like this, air tyres would have an advantage as they do grip better than the solid tyres, and you notice you'd have more control over the mobility scooter. So when it comes to disadvantages of air tyres, obviously because they have a tube, the big disadvantage is that they can get a puncture. Now, it's not something that's going to happen too often, but it's something that could happen, and it's something that you do need to think about if you're considering this type of tyre. Also, and I mentioned this earlier, there is a little bit more maintenance involved with them because you will have to check the tyre pressure and ensure that the tyres are kept inflated. Again, for some people it's not a big deal, but it's just another consideration that you need to think about. So to wrap up, for most people I do recommend going with the solid tyres if you have the choice. Typically for most people it is the better option, but as I mentioned, there might be situations or cases where the air tyres would have an advantage. So if you need the most comfortable solution possible, or you're going to be using a scooter on very rough ground, then in those types of situations the air tyres would have an advantage and are worth considering. I suppose, like anything, it's just about weighing up the pros and cons before deciding. If you need any more advice or guidance on this or anything else related to mobility scooters, then please get in touch. My contact details are below. If you like these type of videos, please click subscribe, and I'll talk to you all again. All the best.